Hello, my name is Edwin Rynveld. I'm from the Netherlands. I represent International Audio Holding. I'm CEO of the company. Most people know us by our brand names Siltech and Crystal Cable, HMS and Sphinx. Siltech is our oldest product. We started that in 1983, so it's more than 40 years old. And the name Siltech comes from silver technology. Why is that? Because as students, we did experiments with different types of material to find what was the best sound. In those days, they found that silver, high purity silver, was the best conductor and also gave the best results in sound. So that's how all started in 1983. I joined the company much later. I became CEO of the company in 1992. And when I came into the company, as I worked for Philips Research before, I wanted to modernize the way of testing, not just trial and error, but also doing it with real research. I was lucky to be able to buy a complete electromagnetic lab from Philips in Hasselt. They stopped the research of hard disk recorders, and it was very expensive equipment, and I used that to get a deeper insight of what cables do. A lot of people look at cables from a signal goes from one side to the other. There's a little bit current, there are frequencies, voltage, but there's way more to that. When a current goes through a conductor, there's a magnetic field around it. And that's one of the reasons why we have problems with cables. It's one of the reasons why good power cables make a difference. When you have a power cable, you might think, what is the difference? The wire is in the wall, it comes out at the socket, it goes to your equipment. What can the last 1 or 2 meters do? Very simple, the magnetic field that interferes with the sound of the interconnects has a range of about half a meter. If we just think of our amplifier, let's take an integrated amplifier, you have speaker terminals, you have interconnects, you have a power cable, maybe some digital cables, all in a very short space. So if the power cables radiate a magnetic field with a lot of distortion and problems what comes from the AC, that will be picked up by all the other cables and actually make the music sound worse. So one of the things that we did research is how can we make a power cable completely silent and still have a flexible cable? So that's one of the things the research things we did 30 years ago again. And after that, everybody considers the power cables that we make as the absolute reference. And basically, all of this is an extremely silent cable, not producing any noise, not inducing noise into other cables. This is a little bit the hallmark of how we operate. So if we look at a cable in total, what is a cable doing? A lot of people say it's very simple. It brings the music from one point to another. Yes, but in technology, if there are many variables, it becomes very complex. So with music, you have a variation in frequency, high tones, low tones. You have a difference in energy. You have a difference in voltage and a difference in current, especially for power cables and loudspeaker cables. Then there's a difference in timing, and timing is mainly valid for digital cables, where a difference in timing will give a different analog voltage if it goes through the DA converter. So here we have a lot of things that we really can measure. We have a fantastic laboratory. We try to get the best equipment we can find in the world, and if it's not good enough, we build our own equipment. So we're quite good in building very advanced equipment so that we can look to tiny differences in signal behavior. The most amazing thing always is our own ear. How can we hear all these differences? How is it possible that sometimes with a good hi-fi system you have the feeling of height, of that if the singer is close to you, if it's far away. While it's only 2 loudspeakers, you still can get a three-dimensional feeling. And that comes because of a lot of small parts in the signal that add on to this information to your brain. If that information is missing, it sounds 2D, it sounds very flat. So there are a lot of things that we now can measure. In the old days it was not possible to measure it, but we always tried to use more advanced equipment so that we can measure the tiniest signal to find the differences. Well, to make a good cable is a little bit like making a good meal. You have a good chef is one thing, he knows how to cook, but he also has to have very good ingredients. So we use the best ingredients. You have for a cable, you need a conductor, which is usually the inside, usually made of metal. Doesn't have to be, but that's still the most practical and best material. And then you have insulation and you have the outer wiring. So you have basically 2 wires, or 3 if it's XLR, and a perfect insulation. A perfect insulation is vacuum or even air. Air is a perfect insulation. So you might think, okay, let's just hang 2 wires in the air. We have perfect insulation. Completely true. If you do it carefully, sound will be pretty good. But one other thing doesn't go right. You get a very high inductance. The other thing, you get microphony. What is microphony? If there's sound in the room, so the speaker activates the molecules in the air, you get sound pressure, everything is moving. You will notice if you touch something, you feel the resonance in the room from the music. So also the cables can pick up this microscopic energy, and that will be transformed again to music. So the problem if the microphony of a cable is too high is that it's like an echo. The music comes out of your loudspeaker, takes a little while to come to your ear, but also to go to the other cables. If the interconnects pick up this energy, that will be transferred, but the music already came out of your loudspeaker. So let's say 10-20 milliseconds later, it gives a kind of echo in your cable. So if the cable is better designed, like the Siltech cables are, people say the contrast is bigger, it's more silent. How is that possible? And if you do that with a normal measurement, signal to noise measurement, you can see a little difference, but you don't see how big the difference is in practice. Because in practice it's very different, because you have this music in the room, and when maybe the music is silent, you still have the echo coming through your cable, going to your speaker again. So it's like a never-ending echo. That kind of destroys the music. If we talk, so back to the design of a cable. So we need perfect materials. The best material in the world is still monocrystal silver. The next best would be gold. The third best would be copper. And I'm not talking about conductance, I'm talking about distortions. Can you make a high purity metal that conducts the current without causing any distortion? I very often compare current with the same word in English for flow of water. In many languages, current for electricity is the same as current in water. If water flows through a river, you want the river to be very smooth. If it's a real river, it will splash everywhere. Everywhere where there's a stone, you'll get a splash of water and you don't get a nice, easy flow. So you can already imagine that to make a good cable, the purity of the metal has to be good, the mechanical smoothness has to be very good, because otherwise you get all kind of little noise problems added to the sound. There shouldn't be any other metals in. If you make any metal, there will be something else in it too. So in silver there may be little traces of gold and of nickel and of iron and other things. If you purify it, it becomes very, very expensive. But if you purify it enough, you can use less material of this high quality to get a perfect sound. So the next step is to have perfect insulator. We just talked about it before. Air is very good, but impossible because you get a lot of microphonics and you get a very high inductance. Inductance basically means it slows down the high frequencies. and the same as capacitance, it kind of shuts the high frequencies and also will give a kind of delay in the signal. So we try to make cables with very, very low inductance, very low capacitance, very low resistance, very low microphoning, perfect timing. That means when the signal comes in, the rhythm at the output of the cable should be exactly the same. There should be no difference in there. And then there are about 100 other less important but still important little technical things that also affect the sound. And all these things we built a lot of experience in the last 30 years to, in our mind, make the best cable we can on earth. If we talk about installation materials, if we can't use air and we want to make a normal cable that's flexible, that you can connect, you need to use the most advanced materials. That's why we use Kapton from DuPont. We use PEEK also from DuPont. So we use artificial materials from the highest quality. In our latest top product, we use up to 11 layers of different materials, because every installation material has an area where it is perfect and an area where it's not so good. If it's in the mid-range and we add another layer that's very good at the high frequencies, the total result will be you get a perfect installation for both areas. So that's what we do, and that's why we have so many different layers. We even use silk, which is a natural material made by, I don't know the English name, but it's a little thing that moves like this, you know. You know what I mean. So it's a natural material. A natural material has more variation, more tolerance. It can be sensitive to moisture, if there's more moisture in the air. So to make it perfect, we had to encapsulate it by another material that makes it completely sealed against elements. That means that you can use silk in a perfect manner by coating it with other materials. All these technologies we used in our Master Crown, which indeed is the best cable we ever made in our history. And at the moment we cannot make anything better. If we can, we do it. A lot of people know Siltech. For 40 years always has been on the top of the list to buy. I would say if people don't buy a Siltech, it's because it's too expensive. We recommend them take a lower cost Siltech, because what is very important with Siltech, they're very well balanced. I learned that myself from the car industry. If you want to have a range of cars, the more expensive should feel more luxurious, be better in everything, but it should not be made of cheap components. So even our lowest cost Siltech still has the very high quality of materials, the best quality. So you will never see PVC or paper or other materials in our cables. Even the lowest cost Siltech uses copper. It uses monocrystal copper only. It uses Kapton insulation, very advanced, expensive materials, to get a super quality with a copper cable. The benefit from silver is that it will not degrade, but it will get better over time. The same with gold. Only silver and gold improve sound over time. Copper and aluminum will degrade over time. The reason is this: it's very simple. Copper and aluminum do oxidize at room temperature. Siltech only oxidizes at 450 degrees, which is is impossible to ever happen. But people very often ask us, yes, but I've silverware, at home. It could be silver chopstick or a silver spoon or a silver fork or a silver knife. They are never made of pure silver. They are made with iron, and they put iron in to make it strong. Otherwise, it would be very flexible. A really pure silver wire is almost like rubber. It's extremely flexible, much more flexible than copper, which is very good. That means that you can make very flexible cables with it. And because it will never oxidize, because of our purity of the wire, that means that even after 30 years, it's still getting better. Why does it get better? Basically, if you look with a microscope to the wire, you will always see it's not perfectly flat. What we think is flat is it depends on magnification. So if we look at 2000 times magnification, it looks maybe perfectly flat. If we look at 50,000, you do that with an electron microscope, you will certainly see some bumps. It's not as smooth anymore. If it's not smooth, it means there is some tensions in the outside of the cable. Now it becomes interesting. When current is flowing, and even at room temperature, the atoms are resonating, so they're moving a little bit. If you look at the resonant pattern, it's a kind of average movement, but every now and then there is a bigger movement. There's all names for this, but it's you could say kind of Gaussian noise. So when the movement is a little bit bigger, it maybe locks in place with another atom to make the perfect crystal again. If that happens, you have an improved conductivity and reduced distortion of the cable. That's why the second-hand price for Siltech is so high. Even 30 or 40-year-old Siltech cables still sell for relatively high prices, sometimes 40%, 50% of the new price. The reason is, the older they get, the better they get. As good as they are new, they still are getting better every month, every day, every year. That's something that no other brand has. That's only valid for Siltech cable and also for our sister brand, Crystal Cable, because basically we use similar materials, sometimes different, because we have a different sonic character in that product, but also the same quality of materials. What we think, it gives kind of stability to the market. If we look to our cable lines, they usually run for 7 to 12 years without change. So when we come out with a new product, it's typically a Siltech, but a much better Siltech than the one before. We have to make this jump in quality. So in the 7-8 years that we are usually working on it, when we have a new model, we immediately start working on it, and after 7 to 12 years, we have so many little improvements, we all put it together in the next series, and then we get this big jump in quality. So again, it will be 7 to 12 years before changing it. That's very good also for the customer. I would say if a cable manufacturer changes his cables every 2 years or 3 years, it means the research is not good. That means they are trying to resell a cable again and again and again. And it's not nice for the customer, because as a customer, you want a stable product that works a long time in your system and gives you the perfect music for a long, long time. And that's what we try to do. So it's top quality materials, top quality engineering. Also the configuration, we didn't talk about that, has a big influence on the sound. And if you do everything together like we do, then you have a Siltech cable.